Okay, so welcome everybody. So this is our intro to shadow work for witches, empaths, and spiritually minded people. So if you have not learned very much about shadow work before, this is going to be a great introduction to you. I'm going to tell you all about what the shadow is, what shadow work is. I'm going to give you some techniques for both shadow work and energy work that you can get started with right now. And then at the end, there will be some space for Q&A, and I'll share with you a bit about our Shadow Seekers membership, which is opening up right at the end of this recording. We'll be opening up and taking in our next round of members. Okay, so let's just dive right in. And I always like to start all my workshops with quotes from Carl Jung. He is often thought of, I shouldn't even say often, he is thought of as the godfather of shadow work. And he said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So there is a lot of importance in this quote for us. You know, what happens to us is that we have these underlying motivations, these underlying urges, these unconscious reasons that we do things, and we're not aware of them fully. So if you've ever said to yourself, man, I always respond this certain way to this person, I don't know why. Or I always, whenever somebody does that, it just gets under my skin and I don't know why. Shadow work is what is going to help you uncover all those whys. And once we understand the why, we free ourselves up. We're in more control to move forward into our future. We're not spending all of that or wasting all of that energy kind of being led by something that seems to be controlling us. Okay, and you'll understand more as we go further into this. So we're going to start with what is the shadow to begin with. So the shadow, where this really comes from is from Jungian theory, though if you look back in more ancient esoteric texts, you will see that people are doing something very similar. They're looking at unconscious motivations for things far, far back in human history. This isn't something that just popped up in the early 1900s when Jung was working. But Jung is the one who coined the term shadow and shadow work. And so this idea of what we're doing, it is part of Jungian theory. So the idea behind the shadow is that we all have one, whether we want to accept it or not. So there are people who, kind of come, they start to dabble in shadow work and it makes them very uncomfortable. And they want to say, well, that must be something that everybody else has, but not me. I don't have that. And that the reality is that's not true. We all have this aspect of ourselves, whether we want to believe it or not, whether we want to accept it or not, it's there. Now, our shadow forms in two different ways, and it's very important that we understand that both of these ways are natural, because the one thing we don't want is when people come to shadow work and they want to begin this kind of healing and journey towards enlightenment, we don't want people to think that they're bad or they've done something bad or wrong in their lives. That's not what the shadow is about. The shadow is simply formed by roles and hats that we tried on, but we didn't pursue. That's one aspect of it. So I always tell this story about myself as a little ballerina at like age 4 or 5. And I don't have a lot of memory of this because it was probably pretty traumatic, but I was enrolled in ballet school. And for one reason or another, I didn't make it through the first day. I was sent home. And so there was this narrative that kind of got built around that I'm not flexible, that I'm not graceful, that I'm not good enough for that I'm not coordinated, right? And this is a narrative that I carried throughout my life until I undid that later in my 30s when I became a yoga teacher and I realized that I was flexible and coordinated and graceful enough for these things. But what that means is our shadow is carrying all those roles and those hats that you tried on as a little kid, that you tried on as a teenager, even some of the things that you tried on as an adult, they're all in your shadow, which means that the shadow in that respect is very creative. There's so much creative energy to tap into. And what you'll find is when you get further on your shadow work journey, you may find that your creativity just begins to open up. Now, the other part of the shadow are the personality traits that were shunned by our society. So think about all those negative things that we kind of push off to the fringes of society. Those are the outcasts and the evildoers, right? And the criminals, are filled with greed and anger and rage and hate and lust and jealousy, sloth, selfishness. We could go on and on with all of these negative words, right? But the reality is is that there are aspects of our shadow that embody those too. We feel jealous at times. We feel greedy. We feel angry. We hate sometimes, right? We have lust. We feel selfish, right? And so those are the aspects of our shadow that we can truly tap into, because they are controlling things underneath the surface. And as we push away and we reject them, we create some tension underneath the surface. Okay, so our shadow forms very early, before we even know that such a thing exists. So in some ways, perhaps it's quite unfair, right? This is this thing that's going to form. We're not even able to know what it is when it forms. But in another way, we're lucky, because it's a path towards enlightenment. You'll hear me say this many times during this workshop. Shadow work, some say that shadow work is the truest path towards enlightenment. Now, there are many paths towards enlightenment, but this is one way to get there, and it is a way that is accessible to all. So what that means is, while it is unfair, perhaps, that the shadow forms so early when we're not even aware it's going on, what it does is it opens up a path later where we can heal ourselves, where we can ascend towards our spiritual evolution and our enlightenment. And for many people who I know who get called to this kind of work, witches and empaths and spiritually and magically minded people, this is what we're here for. Ultimately, we're here for that spiritual evolution, that ascension, right? Now, the problem with the shadow is that it creates this very uncomfortable dichotomy and tension inside of us that is looking at things as being good or bad, right or wrong. And the thing is that dichotomy doesn't really exist. If you look at nature and the universe, you'll see that everything is simply neutral. So look at even big storms, right, that come in and ravage areas, right, and they kill people and animals and uproot trees. It's not that Mother Nature is evil and she's here doing some bad things to us, right? That is simply a construct that we have made up in our society. There's both sides to everything, and there are both sides to us. But when we cannot face that shadow side, right, that darker side of us, that's when we get into trouble. That's when we start to cause all that tension inside of us. It causes us so much stress to have that dichotomy, and that there's energy that we are using all the time to try to keep our shadow side at bay, right? Our jealousy and our anger and our greed and our selfishness, and just any negative thoughts or emotions that you feel, we're always trying to push them away, and it takes so much energy. And the thing is, that energy could be utilized for something so much greater. It could be utilized for our spiritual evolution. And as we go further into the workshop, I'll share a little bit more about my story and how I realized that when I did shadow work, I actually accelerated my abilities as a witch. And I'd been practicing for several decades when I really dove into my shadow work. I really thought that I had grown as a witch to probably where I could be. And it was when I did the shadow work, it just opened up everything for me. So there is so much transformation available in this type of journey. So as I mentioned, shadow work is considered part of Jungian individuation theory, but shadow work, well, perhaps it was coined only in the early 1900s. It goes back through human history. If you look at ancient esoteric texts, for example, just simply look at the story of Inanna's descent into the underworld. For those who don't know it very well, Inanna had a sister named Ereshkigal who lived in the underworld, and their brother died. And Inanna wanted to descend into the underworld to visit her brother, to go to his funeral services. But she had to descend through these 7 gates, some say the 7 gates of hell, to get down to the underworld. And when she got there, her sister hung her on a meat hook and made her hang there in the underworld. And this is a gruesome story, right? But in reality, what the story is it's simply the descent into the unconscious to face the shadow self. Inanna's sister Ereshkigal is her own shadow. So this goes back centuries, this type of work. Now, although we are influenced by our genetics at birth, our environments do play a great and major role in shaping our psyches. So the environment is what's out there telling you what's okay and what's not okay. Now, it is all about the different groups that we're part of. So our family units when we're growing up, our caregivers, churches, anybody who's part of a church, right? There's a whole set of rights and wrongs there. The school that you went to, the friends groups that you're in tell you what's okay to do and what's not okay to do. And so what we do, because of all those groups telling us what's okay and what's not okay, we don't really, as kids, we don't really have anything that we can do but listen to that. And so what we do is we develop this mask that's called the persona. And it's a mask that we wear. It contains a very likable personality that covers up any perceived flaws that we might have, right? So when the society tells you it's not okay to be aggressive, for example, right? And you have that trait in you and you feel that kind of struggle and that tension, that dichotomy as a kid. So we put on that likable personality in order to cover it up. And so what happens is that over time, we start to think that that mask is us, that true self, but that is not us. It's not our true self. Now, during our individuation stage, we decide to become who we truly are. And for many people, this will start around the 40s or the 50s, but it can begin earlier or later. And so for me, I kind of began it probably in my 30s. In our own Shadow Seekers membership, we have people who are in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s. So it's really a wide range. It doesn't really matter when you get called to the path. But in Jungian individuation theory texts, they'll say most people kind of start to realize that something isn't right. And it sometimes can equate to that midlife crisis, right, that people will have in the 40s and 50s. Something isn't right. And it's just kind of the beginning when we get that, when we start to feel that like something isn't right around here, right? And so we start to realize like, I'm not that mask that I'm wearing. I'm wearing something to cover up something that I am. I'm not the personality traits that everybody thinks I am, or that I think I am, for example. I'm not the patterns that I engage in. We're not those patterns. We aren't just an amalgamation of all the things that happened to us in the past. So what we are is something much bigger, right? What we realize during that point in our lives is that we're something much greater. And so many people who come to our Body Mind Witchcraft group, they come kind of with that idea too. Like there's something bigger out there. There's something more out there that I haven't quite tapped into. And this is a pathway towards that. So shadow work is part of our individuation. And what we have to do during it is we got to face all those things that are buried down so deep in our unconscious minds. That's not always easy to do because that unconscious thinks that it's got to keep the stuff down there to protect us. So we don't really know what's down there. What we might start to notice, and many of you may have started to notice this, is we engage in certain patterns and we just don't know why. We just don't know why. Why am I acting that way in that situation? Or why do I always procrastinate when it comes time to do a certain type of work? Or, why am I fighting with my husband or my wife or my friends? Or why can't I get along with my child? Or, we start to see like we're in these patterns and we just don't know why. And until we find the root of the why, these patterns will just continue to control us. So we can put band-aids on the surface, right? But we're just going to continue to be controlled by what's underneath. Now, during shadow work, what we do is we take the mask off and we unveil what's underneath. And it can be eye-opening to see it, right? To finally see it unveiled. Most of us think that our persona, that mask we wear, is good and caring. We pride ourselves on being good people. I pride myself on being a good person. I'm sure that you do too. And so what will often happen is that we get triggered by our own persona's polar opposite. So if you're somebody who is really neat, let's say you're very organized and very neat, you may get very triggered by someone who's very messy and disorganized. And whenever we get triggered, this is a very important thing for us to understand because it's the universe is trying to tell us something that's under the surface there. So sometimes what happens is there's a part of us who kind of wishes that we could just do whatever we like and have no one to answer to. So even the person who's very neat may wish sometimes that they could just let it all go. And just not worry about it anymore, right? So we're always kind of getting triggered by that opposite, whatever that quality or trait is in you. And so, for example, I work a lot. I work more than most people I know. And so sometimes laziness might be a trigger for me because it's so opposite of me, right? But there's something very important for me to look there, because probably a part of me wishes that I could just kind of give in and not have to work so hard sometimes. So there is this idea in our society that is good on one hand, but actually can be a little detrimental to our shadow work on the other hand. So there's this idea, if you just think positive, just change your thoughts, just bring positive energy into your life, and that's going to control the direction of your life. And there is some truth to that, very much so. But it really only works if we've done our shadow work, because if we still have all the underlying motivations, all the unconscious stuff underneath, we can be as positive as we want to be. We can change all those thoughts as many times as we want to change them or try to change them. But we still haven't addressed anything that's under the surface. So we can't just wish the shadow away by being positive. That is one of the golden rules here. I'll just tell you right now, you cannot wish your shadow away just by being positive. And so you may know people like that, right? Who are just like, keep a positive attitude, but never really deal with anything inside of them. That's not what we want to do here. So we think, though, when we're in that kind of mind frame, or people who are in that mindset kind of think, if we could heal, if we could just get rid of all the negative people around us that suck out our energy, just get rid of all those people and we'll be okay, right? Or we think that if we just set boundaries, and then we're very careful about those people who are overstepping current ones, that everything will be okay if we can just do that. Or maybe we change a job or a relationship or a location, we move, or we change our friends groups or find new friends, and we think everything will be okay if we can do that. But the reality is, it's just simply a Band-Aid that we're putting on, and we're not actually fixing anything at all at a very deep level. So it may on the surface feel like everything's good, but there'll come a day when it kind of hits us that everything's not so good. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Falling Down. It had Michael Douglas in it, I think. But if you never watched it, it's a very interesting movie. It was set in LA, like in the 90s. I watched it as a kid, I think. And it's just that moment where people just snap, right? Because we kind of put this persona up that everything's fine, but we haven't dealt with anything underneath. And then one day we just snap like he does in that movie. So I bring this up because, again, I think it's important for us to address this idea that, it would be nice if we could just wish it all away. We could just change our thoughts and change everything about us, and I found this post on social media. It says, neurologists claim that every time you resist negative emotions and choose positive ones, you're actually rewiring your brain to be more positive and loving. And there is a reality to that. My degree is in neuropsychology, so I know absolutely we do rewire our brain, but that's only half of it, because if we don't address what's underneath it, it's just going to be there. What we resist persists. So instead, what we need to do, we need to face whatever this is, whatever's underneath in the unconscious, in our shadow. We need to process it. We need to then try to integrate it or release it, one or the other or both. And and what I also want to mention here, because I've had this question come up in a few Q&As, is someone had asked if shadow work was spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity, and absolutely not. It's not toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is where we just think positive and don't deal with anything. And spiritual bypassing is where we're not actually working on ourselves at all. Shadow work is all about working on yourself. So this is really a way, like, what I feel the best thing we can do is really do work with positive thoughts, because there is absolutely truth to this. Like, when you set your mind to something, you can make really incredible things happen. But on the flip side of that, we also have to do the unconscious work. That together, those two things together, that's the spiritual alchemy. That's the gold for us. So what is shadow work? So we spent a lot of time talking about, what the shadow is. Now we're kind of getting into like, well, how do we do it? So one of the best ways to do it is to look at what's triggering you in your life. Our triggers are our biggest teachers. And when we're triggered, it's an opportunity that the universe is giving us. There is something that we're ready to see and something that we're ready to work through. Okay, so think about your deepest trigger right now, and I'm going to give you some exercises at the end as well that you can continue on after this workshop. But, maybe for the rest of this, just be kind of mulling over in your mind, what really triggers you? Because that's going to be a great place for you to start. The universe is saying, you're ready to see this and make some changes in this area. So what we want to do is, rather than project everything out into the world outside of us, we want to turn the light on the inside. What is really going on inside of us? Now, it's not to negate the bad things that other people do that trigger us, but we only can go so far in dealing with that external thing. The internal work is the true work. That's the gold. So what is really going on inside? We're not really going to make a lot of progress in our healing until we do just that. So Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It's kind of the opposite of what we may have been taught in some of those Abrahamic religions that many of us grew up in, right? We're just taught to just bring in light. And don't get me wrong, love and light is great, but we're not really going to become enlightened until we see that darkness inside and we make that conscious. So it's always such a great analogy to talk about Medusa, especially for those of us who work with deities and work with spiritual energies, right? The story is so perfect for shadow work. You know, in order to slay Medusa, Perseus had to use his shield to look at her. Most of you know this story. He couldn't look at her directly or he would be turned to stone. And most of the time, it's very hard for us to see our own darkness, but we can see it in everybody else, right? We can look out in the world and our friends, our family, our employers, our employees, our children. We can see it in everybody around us. We just can't see it in us usually. So rather than thinking about all of it as belonging to other people, we need to gaze right at it, our own internal Medusa. So look for that, your own internal Medusa. And it's very hard to face at first. You're probably not going to like what you see when you first start doing it. And so it's why it's very good to have people who are going through it with you, to have some guidance and support. We'll talk about that at the end, because you may not like what you see at first, but it is a pathway through when we can face that internal Medusa. And when we can do this regularly, this is how we begin to free ourselves truly. Now, the goal of shadow work is really to work with that shadow, like we talked about, loosen the hold that conditioning has on it. So all that stuff you learned in church and school and from your families, you know, that maybe those are universal, they're thought to be kind of these societal truths, but in reality, they don't really resonate with us so much, right? So what we're trying to do is kind of loosen the hold of that conditioning. When we do that, we realize that we have so much more freedom than we thought that we did. And some people will say that when they start doing the shadow work and they start to kind of work on these different shadow aspects, it feels like retrieving lost pieces of themselves. It almost feels like coming home, sometimes people will say. And we realize that we no longer need to be spending all of that energy keeping the shadow at bay, because we simply know how to deal with the shadow, how to face it, how to embrace it, how to integrate it, how to release it, all of that. And we no longer need to spend all that energy keeping it stuffed down. That is where the real perks of all this come into play. Like, we come here to heal. We come here to integrate pieces of ourselves. Most of the people who come to shadow work, there's something that they want to heal, something that they want to work through. But what we find is that when we begin the path, right, and it starts to open up, the road is so beautiful because it's the road to our spiritual evolution. Now, something about shadow work is I pair shadow work with energy work, and that actually is what makes this whole process unique. Most programs on shadow work, they don't take into account the subtle bodies. So the subtle bodies are your energetic body that contains your chakras and your nadis, which are all your energy lines. It doesn't take into account your mental body or your emotional body. We have all of these different bodies, like our soul body, right? So they are focused mainly on the mind and the emotions. But the reality is that the maintenance of the persona, so being able to keep that mask up and out for everybody in the world, it takes so much energy that we end up developing a lot of mental and emotional blockages. but also energetic ones. That is in our pranamaya kosha. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, just so you have a little, just very brief background on how the energy bodies work. But if you, let's say you have some kind of a trauma when you're a child or a teenager, or even as an adult, and if we can't really properly release it, like a lot of times we can't, we don't process it completely, for example, we will end up storing it somewhere in our bodies. So sometimes people will, they'll find that they just have this pain in the neck that never goes away, and it doesn't seem to have a physical purpose. You may even go to a chiropractor or to a doctor and they do x-rays and there's just nothing really there. But sometimes we'll store energy in certain places, or people will store it in their womb, or people will store it in like their throat because they're having trouble expressing themselves. It can sometimes manifest as sore throats or earaches or all these different physical manifestations. But really what they can be, on one hand, are these kind of blockages, these energetic blockages we've created by holding trauma and emotions in the body and not releasing and dealing with them. So what makes this type of shadow work so unique is that we work with the energetic bodies through alignment practices, and this helps to accelerate the healing process, because we're not just working through the emotions. We're not just changing kind of our thoughts and our emotions. We are actually changing the energy in our bodies too, and pairing those is true gold, is true alchemy. So in shadow work, we kind of remove those emotional blockages in the emotional body, and then the energy work will remove the blockages in the energetic body. This is truly, I believe, how we take the intuition, magical abilities, and spiritual practices to the next level. So like I mentioned before, I really dove into the practice because of something I was going through. And as I did it, I was kind of trying to heal myself emotionally. But what I found is I would step into my rituals, and I've been a high priestess for like 15 years now or something. And, I've been a practicing witch for 25 years. And so I've been doing rituals, all different kinds of rituals, and working with deities. But when I really started doing my shadow work, that's where I would step into that circle, and my intuition had exploded. My magical abilities had exploded. My ability to connect to my goddesses and gods had exploded and accelerated as well. So it's just a major perk of this kind of work. So over a period of time, doing cycle after cycle of this process, your true healing of the emotional and the spiritual evolution, or your true healing and your emotional and spiritual evolution, can take place. So just very briefly, like I mentioned, I wanted to just give you a little background on the energetic bodies, okay? So we have 5 bodies, not just one, 5. So the first one is our physical body. In Sanskrit, it's called the Annamaya Kosha. This is the food sheath. So literally, when people say you are what you eat, literally you are, because we take in food in our body through chemistry. Chemical reactions changes that food into nutrients that go to build your cells, right? So you're literally are what you eat. That is your Annamaya Kosha. Now we call this the grossest of the bodies. That just simply means that it is the most dense. That's why it's physical. We can actually see it, as opposed to these other bodies that we can't see. And it's made up of the 5 elements, which are earth, water, fire, air. In witchcraft, we usually would say spirit, but in most Vedic traditions, they'll say ether as the 5th element. Now, after that, you have the pranamaya kosha. The pranamaya kosha is the pranic sheath. This is your energy body. Okay, so it's all about your chakras and your nadi lines, and they're connected to your physical body through different areas in the physical body that will connect to the chakras. Okay, so these are called plexuses, by the way, in the physical body. So the one we most commonly know of is the solar plexus. There's actually a part in your physical body that is the solar plexus that connects to the solar plexus in your chakra system. Now, this is where all your energetic blockages are happening. So when we're doing energy work, this is the part of the body that we're most working with. Now, in shadow work, we're really working with that kind of mental and emotional body. So the Manomaya Kosha, you don't have to know any of these Sanskrit names, just kind of have to just be aware of these different bodies we have. So this is the mental and the emotional body. Now, this is a fluctuating body. So whereas your physical body doesn't change very much, or when it does change, it changes rather slowly. The mana maya kosha, or the mental and emotional body, changes very quickly. You know how quickly you can change a thought, right? Or change an emotion. You can feel very happy, and 10 minutes later, you can be feeling very, very sad. So we are, this part of us is able to move in and out of different states of being. And so this is where we're really working when we're doing shadow work. We're trying to work through those emotions and those thoughts that we have that are fluctuating. They are not us. And then we have the Vijnanamaya kosha. Again, you don't have to know the Sanskrit. This is the intellectual body. This is where our intuition is. So when we start to get rid of the blockages in the energetic body, we start to get rid of the blockages in the mental and emotional body, we're more able to tap into this intellectual body, which is our intuition. So this is why our intuition opens up when we do this kind of work. It's really a portal between our thinking in this incarnation and our pure awareness outside of us in the universe. And also shadow work takes place there. And then finally, there's the Anandamaya kosha. Ananda means bliss. So this is like our heavenly body, our blissful body. Some will say it's the spiritual body. This is how we connect to the divine. This is, some would say, our soul, really. Okay, so it's important, like, and there's a nice like drawing here too. They're like Russian nesting dolls. So one is inside of the other, which means that they're all touching at all times. So when we make a change in one, we begin to make a change in all of them. Okay, so that brings me to priming and pumping. So priming and pumping is two different methods that you use to kind of do your shadow work. Okay, so when we work with the Panchamaya Kosha system, so that's the whole system, all 5 bodies, we're more easily able to drop through the physical body into the energetic body. Okay, so the energetic body is where we want to get rid of those like emotional blockages. And I saw someone in the chat had said like the body stores its trauma. Yeah, it's storing, it's totally storing it here in the energetic body. And so we're able to, as like we relax the physical body, we're able to drop down into the energetic body. And then from there, we can drop further. We can kind of work on those blockages there, releasing that kind of energy. And then we can drop down into the emotional and mental bodies where we're more able and receptive to do our shadow work. So how this works is we have two kind of complementary processes. So one of them is called priming the pump. So these are just simply activating exercises that are designed to move large amounts of energy from one place in the body to another place, or from outside of the body into the body, or from inside of the body out to the body. But essentially what it is just how are we going to move energy? That's what we're doing when we're priming the pump. So these exercises and activities are typically done when we have more energy. So we just simply, most of us simply have more energy from the new moon to the full moon. We're in kind of an activating phase. And as anybody who's follows kind of the lunar cycles knows that energy builds more and more and more as we get to that peak at the full moon. So we do these exercises because they're very activating. And these practices help us break up stuck and stagnant energy in the body that otherwise will hinder the natural flow of our energy. When we break up this kind of energy, these blockages, what it means is the magic that we make is more effective because we are more healthy, we're unhampered. We don't have all that unhampered energy kind of behind our magic, right? Because we're letting go of it all. So what I wanted to show you, so before we go on to how we do prompting, which is kind of on the other side of the cycle, let me just share with you a couple of very simple energy exercises that you can do. And if you've been following me for a while, you may have already seen me demonstrate these. But those who are new or just want a refresher, these are 2 really good ones that you can do. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and you're just going to put your fingertips on your shoulders like this. And this is just called spinal twist. This is a Kundalini energy exercise. It can be used in with a series of other exercises, or can be a standalone like we're going to do right now. And what you do is you're going to inhale as you turn, and you kind of twist very slightly to the left. And then you're going to exhale as you turn to slightly to the right. Okay, so it goes inhale and exhale, inhale, exhale. And you can take it very slow at first. And then sometimes people kind of speed it up. You just go at your own pace. My back just cracked, so sometimes that's a bonus. So it looks kind of like this. Okay, and so if you do this, I'm just going to continue doing this and you can join me. We're going to do this for like about 40 seconds or so. So if you do this for about a minute to 2 minutes, you can work up to 3 minutes. This is just going to move a lot of energy. And again, too fast, slow down. So notice I'm talking while I'm doing all of it, which means I'm not breathing in the pattern, but it should be inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Do it a little bit longer, just so we can, I want you to be able to feel this in your body. Okay, 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come back to center. Now hold your breath for just a moment. Just hold. And then whenever you naturally need to take an exhale, just exhale. And then you close your eyes and just sit here for a moment. And if you were doing that for about the full minute or so that I did it, you may feel some tingling in your body. That's called the pranic buzz. It's a sign that energy is moving. So what an exercise like that can do is it can break up stuck and stagnant energy in the torso, near the solar plexus. It's also very good for the sacral chakra as well. And that twist is also nice for the heart. So essentially we're moving energy that might be stuck or stagnant here in these 3 energetic centers. So another practice that you can try is called breath of fire. So the breath of fire is a type of breathing. Sometimes people call this dragon's breath. And the easiest way to do it is if you imagine like your palm was a mirror and like you were going to fog up a mirror like that, okay? And so what you'll do is you'll kind of begin breathing that way. So it's a very staccato exhale, and the inhale is very passive. You probably won't even realize that you're taking in a little bit of air in this kind of passive inhale. And then eventually you're going to close your mouth. And you breathe like that for a minute. I usually tell people in the beginning when you're first starting out, just do a minute of that. Alternatively, another really nice technique that's very similar to it is the panting breath. So just imagine panting like a dog. And you stick your tongue out. Don't worry about how it looks. It's a very neutralizing and cleansing breath. I should say it's not even neutralizing, it's an activating breath and very cleansing. And you just do these kind of rhythmic panting. You do that for about a minute when you're first starting out, but you could work up to 2 or 3 minutes. And it will have a very great, very quick effect on the energetic body. You'll notice again, when you kind of end that, do that breath for a minute and you stop and you just sit there for a moment, you'll feel that kind of pranic buzz in your body. Okay, so you'll know that your energy is moving. That particular breath is good for moving energy anywhere in the body, but particularly in the middle, in the solar plexus, and in the heart, which tend to be 2 places where we hold a lot of tension. Okay, so if you do little practices like that, like literally add in the spinal twist and that breath of fire, that panting breath, spend a couple of minutes a day or nearly every day doing like that, you will actually be shocked by how different you feel. So I challenge you to try that. What happens a lot of the times, I know this happens for me too, is we learn these great new things and we're all gung-ho about it, but we taper off very quickly. But this is a very short, just 2 little tiny short practices. They'll take up less than 5 minutes of your time a day. So see if you can make a habit of doing this, because I tell you, it's going to make a big, big difference. Okay, so when we're doing those priming exercises, what we're doing is we're breaking up all of that stuck and stagnant energy so that we're ready when it comes time for prompting. Okay, before I go to the prompting slide, activating breath work. We saw one breath like that, Kundalini energy exercises. That was our spinal twist. But you can also do things like hiking, dancing, intuitive movement, anything that gets your body moving, but has you in kind of a receptive space. Okay. All right. So then we move on to prompting, a shadow work session. So in prompting, the exercises and activities are typically done from the full moon to the new moon. So this is when we're falling into that more receptive state. Now, these, if you feel like doing the priming exercises in the waning half of the lunar cycle, it's totally fine. But if you're trying to kind of sync to the actual energy of the moon, this is a good way to kind of break it down. Okay, so now we pass over the full moon and we come into this space where we're more receptive. Okay, so these practices allow us to drop deeper into ourselves. And for this reason, it's not unusual for someone to have a shadow work session happen right after they do some of these exercises. Okay, so the examples here are active imagination, shadow journaling, yin yoga, and yoga nidra. And I'm going to talk about all of those in a little bit and give you some ideas of where you can move forward with shadow work. Okay, but these are all activities that bring you into a receptive space. Okay, so like I said, if you do the priming and you do the prompting exercises over the course of several cycles, you're going to notice that you have more shadow work sessions and that what you receive during them has greater value. Now, I am going to share with you what a shadow work session looks like. So I talk about this. Well, what is a shadow work session? So all of this is kind of shadow work and energy work. But every once in a while, we just fall into what we might call a shadow work session. And during this time, it really looks different for everybody. What a lot of people notice is that they begin to process or experience something in their life or an issue that they're having in a different way. And it usually happens very quickly. Okay, it's like an aha moment. So many people will say, oh, wow. Oh, wow. I have like all of a sudden, I understand why I'm doing this thing at 40. And it goes all the way back to when I was 4 years old. Okay. So all of a sudden you'll receive this sudden insight into something that may have troubled you for decades that you did not have an answer for. And afterwards, you'll feel like a great amount of work has been done, but it may have only lasted for a few minutes. It can often be just a very, very quick moment, which is why some people will call it, to use kind of modern terms, they'll call it like a cosmic download. Some people don't like that term, but it can feel very much that way. Like we just received all of this information kind of in a second. And you may feel that something that had been an issue for you forever or for quite some time has now been resolved. And though you may want to do a releasing ritual afterwards, we're witches, we love our rituals. So maybe we want to ritualize the release, but yet you may find so much great relief after these shadow work sessions. Okay. So these sessions, they can come unprompted. Sometimes they'll just hit you out of nowhere. But the more that you do these exercises, the more often these sessions will hit you and the more valuable they'll become. Okay, so they're really going to let go of stuff that has troubled you for some time, or they're going to bring it out into the light. Okay, so what are some shadow work methods? So what can we do to, prompt all of this, to get this all going? So the first thing I mention, or I usually typically recommend people do, is work with the energy of the waning crescent moon, okay? In particular, the balsamic and the dark moons. So these are times where you are most receptive to this type of energy. So what I tell people to do is when you get into the balsamic moon, for those who don't know what the balsamic is, it's the last 3 days of the lunar cycle, so the last 72 hours. And then the dark moon is the very final day of the lunar cycle. It is not the same day as the new moon. Okay, the new moon will follow the dark moon. But this is sort of like, to use an analogy that unfortunately only it only kind of resonates with certain people in the population, but anybody who bleeds, who has a menstrual cycle, will know that there's like the cycle that goes through and you feel totally different energetically throughout that cycle, right? And the very, very end, right before you're about ready to get your period, there'll be like kind of this tension. That is what's happening around the balsamic and the dark moons. Like our bodies, not just our physical bodies, like our energetic bodies, they want to release stuff as well. And this goes for all genders. It doesn't have to be someone who has a menstrual cycle. We all want to let go of energy, right? And so during the balsamic moon, or at least during those last 7 days, when you're in that waning crescent part of the cycle, you may feel pulled inward to do this work. Okay, so if you start to follow the cycles and you start to pay attention to how you are energetically across the lunar cycle, you're just going to naturally fall into this. You're going to be more receptive. So we can also work with dark goddesses, gods and goddesses of the underworld. I mentioned Inanna before. She's a great one for shadow work because her own story is a metaphor for shadow work. Ones that we have worked with in our own membership are the Morrigan. She's great. Her energy is great for shadow work. We have worked with even like we even worked with Amaterasu. She's a Japanese goddess of the sun. We worked with her when we were working through our self-doubt. But other goddesses and goddesses that go into the underworld, like Persephone and Demeter, those are great ones to work with. We can work with Pluto, right? Neptune, if we're into into those deities. But any deities that have connections to kind of that darkness, the unconscious. Odin is a very good one. My list is not exhaustive. Hecate, just naming off a few. But any of these deities, any deity you can work with in shadow work, but some just tend to lend their energy more towards this kind of work. Another thing we can do is what is called self-reflection. That's what we would probably call it in modern day terms. Jung called it active imagination. What it is essentially is it's a form of meditation where you simply kind of go inward and you begin to process something. You begin to kind of ask yourself some questions. So what can be really good is to get some shadow work prompts. They are very easy to find. If you just Google shadow work prompts, you're going to find so many on the internet. And grab a couple of them that seem to kind of resonate with you. And then you'll just go into kind of a light meditative state. And you just contemplate that question. If you're somebody who likes to journal, you can totally write it all down. But sometimes people just prefer to just do that kind of active imagination, just contemplating the question. I like to do this when I'm hiking during like dusk, because the energy of dusk is very receptive to this kind of work. And I just sort of have that question in my mind as I walk, as I climb, and then I let myself be very receptive to any answers coming through. So that's a technique that you can try. Yin yoga is very good for prompting shadow work sessions. Yin yoga is not active yoga like we think of in the West. Typically, you're lying down in poses for 5 minutes at a time sometimes. During this process, your physical body becomes so relaxed that you can drop into your energetic body very quickly. That kind of lets go of some of the blockages there. And then you can drop into the mental and the emotional body, which is where we're doing the shadow work. So what I have found is in yin yoga, I'll get into a pose, right? And sometimes there'll be poses that are designed specifically to release energy in parts of the body that holds a lot, like your hips. Your hips hold a lot of energy. So you'll be in a pose where you're kind of holding it and you're letting go of energy in the hip. And then all of a sudden, there's like a memory from when you were 5, and you may start to cry too. I've cried during these yin yoga sessions. Sometimes you don't even know why. You're just releasing all this energy. And so, but sometimes the shadow work comes through and you make this connection to something that happened to you before, and you're able to kind of cathartically let go of it. So very good. If you've never really done any yin yoga, I highly recommend it. Just Google yin yoga. There's a person I follow on YouTube. Her name is Cassandra. So it's yoga for Cassandra. And she has a lot of yin yoga videos you can try. Yoga Nidra is a special form of meditation. Again, despite the name yoga, it isn't movement yoga like we think of in the West. This is a special type of meditation where you're induced into a deep state and you're given alternating kind of ideas that force your mind to go back and forth between contrasting thoughts and ideas and emotions, and just simply being in the process. Like I said earlier, a teacher of mine, or maybe I didn't say this in this video, but a teacher of mine who taught me how to do Yoga Nidra, she said that just a few months of sessions of Yoga Nidra was like 20 years of therapy for her. So highly recommend it. You can Google it. You can find Yoga Nidra on YouTube. Also, Insight Timer. You can get the free app Insight Timer. Even on the free version, there are a lot of Yoga Nidra videos or recordings that you can listen to. You can do them before bed, but you can actually do them anytime of the day as well. A few other things, inner child work, since the inner child is, since the shadow developed when we were children, our inner child can be a valuable ally for our shadow work. So doing some inner child work can be very great. Taking your inner child out on an inner child date where you just find something that you loved to do as a kid, or perhaps you were never allowed to do as a kid, or a toy you were never allowed to have, and get those things, and really soothe the inner child, give them a food that they loved or couldn't have, or something, or reminds you of childhood, and work through what comes up during that. that can be very powerful in your shadow work. We can work with the shadow and the light archetypes. So archetypes are symbolic representations of energies, and some of them are, we embody them as human archetypes. So when we work through those archetypes, both looking at the shadow and the light side, we learn very much about ourselves, and we can find aspects of our shadow that are ready to heal. So for example, one very easy archetype is the mother archetype. So on the light side, the mother archetype is caring and nurturing and compassionate and giving, right, and kind and generous. And but on the shadow side, the mother archetype can become devouring or withholding or controlling. Okay, so whatever archetypes we embody, so perhaps you feel that you embody the mother archetype, and it doesn't matter what gender you are, you can embody that archetype. But if you embody that archetype, you do have to face both sides of it. And so when you kind of decide that's one of your archetypes, begin to look at the shadow aspects of that archetype, and that will give you pathways for your shadow work. Dream work, the dreams, like our dreams, like Sigmund Freud said, are the royal road to the unconscious. So like we said, the shadow's in the unconscious. It's trying to communicate with us in some ways. Your unconscious will try to tell you things through your dreams. So being very good at learning your own dream symbology, not just grabbing dream dictionaries and looking it up or asking other people what your dream means, but actually really trying to figure out your own dream symbology can be very helpful in your shadow work. Now we can also work with aspects of the astrological chart. So for example, our Chiron placement and our Chiron returns when they come, our Saturn return, which happens around age 28 and 29 to 30, and then happens again in our late 50s, early 60s, and again in our late 80s and early 90s. So these time periods can be periods to do intense shadow work, or to also look at those aspects of our chart, see what's there, and that can give us pathways of where to do some work. The Uranus half return is also a very good one. It tends to happen around like 42, 43. Though mine came a little bit later than that. I think it started at 45 because I'm still in it right now. And that particular return, sometimes people say that's like the midlife crisis. But some people call it the Harley Davidson return, because when people go buy the Harleys, right? Or get a makeover or whatever. But what that return really is about is it's kind of that shaking up moment. What are you going to do with the second half of your life, essentially? Are you on a path that you want to be on, or do you want to change your path? So when you look at that return, that half return, you can learn a lot about where you're at in your life. And then I mentioned earlier doing that active imagination, but if you like doing journaling, like written journaling, do a lot of journaling with those prompts. Just Google shadow work prompts, or in our Witch's Guide to Shadow Work, if you grabbed a downloaded copy of that has a list of prompts you can use as well. So Jung said, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. I have a post that has this, and I always get feedback from people who don't understand that it's a metaphor and try to tell me that their roots don't grow down that far. Of course, we know that it's a metaphor, but it's basically telling us that if we really want to ascend, if we want to reach spiritual enlightenment, we've got to go down underneath first. So shadow work is not easy. As you can probably imagine from hearing this, it's not a journey for the faint of heart. It's a journey that we all must make at some point if we want to really become spiritually enlightened people. We have to make some kind of journey similar to it, at least. If we don't, and maybe we don't call it shadow work necessarily, but it's always important for us to remind ourselves of the many benefits when we are kind of beginning this kind of work, or we're in the middle of it. So we can recover from our trauma. We can feel less alone when we do this. We absolutely feel less alone. This was a big one for me, developing a deeper trust in my own intuition. And that, like I told you, enhancing my magical abilities. We really begin to feel more wholeness and peace as we start to kind of gather those rejected pieces of ourselves. We're not all shattered, right? We bring them all together. We feel more whole. We maximize our own powers of self-healing. This is an incredible, part of it. and that allows us to help heal other people. We begin to integrate all aspects of ourselves, heal those old and new emotional wounds. We understand underlying emotions and motivations, improve our relationships with others, and we find that we're not as affected by negativity and the energy around us, negative energy around us. Up-level your spiritual practice and alchemize the spirit. So these are all benefits that are kind of the gifts that come from this type of work. Okay, so before we go into the Q&A, I want to share with you a couple of exercises that you can use, and then I'm going to open up the floor for the Q&A. Anybody who's watching in replay, wherever you watch this, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, or you got it through your email, feel free to you can ask questions. You can put them in the comments below, because I'm going to answer everybody's questions. I'll go back through, not just for those who are live. Okay, so here is a great way to try to prompt a shadow work session. Okay, so what you will do is you're going to begin by listing 5 people who have or still do annoy, irritate, or anger you. Sometimes we use the word trigger, and if that word doesn't resonate with you, just think about annoy, irritate, anger you. Okay, so think about those 5 people. And then you're going to think about an interaction that you had with them that really sticks out in your mind. Okay, and ask yourself what happened during that interaction. And then what you're going to do is you're going to turn the mirror back on yourself. Okay, so this is all self-work. This is not trying to lay the blame on other people. And it's, again, I do want to stress this. It's not saying that what they did is okay. It's just simply saying that if we want to do this kind of work, it becomes an internal thing, not an external thing. So we're going to remove that person, and we're going to turn the mirror back on ourselves. So one thing you can ask yourself is, in what ways are you like that person? Because sometimes they will kind of trigger like whatever they're displaying outside, they're triggering the inside of you. So there may be an aspect of you that it's kind of rubbing against. Are there ways that you're like that person? How do you display or manifest the qualities that bother you the most about that person? Okay, so you want to kind of think about all of that, and feel free to take a screenshot of all of this too, if you want to remember the exercise. So you can go a little bit deeper with the exercise. So once you're kind of thinking about, you kind of pick the person. So let's say you got your 5 people, right? And you're thinking about how you're like them, or how you might manifest qualities that are like them, or how those qualities that bother you are kind of inside of you. So now you're going to go a little bit deeper, and you're going to choose one of those people. Okay, and you want to now you're going to spend some more time considering the following questions. So list 3 adjectives that describe the person who triggers you. Okay, so just on the surface, what are 3 ways that you would describe that person? And then you're going to ask yourself, this is an interesting question. Why would it be so bad to be like them? Okay, that whatever answer you come up with for that one, that could be really interesting, because it's showing you sort of that edge between the outside and the inside, right? Your inside is what's being triggered. So why would it be so bad to be like them? What do you do to avoid being like them, right? So are there things that you do so you're not like that kind of person that you don't like, or that triggers you or annoys or irritates you? So what do you do to avoid being like them? And then this question is probably one of the most important ones, but how does avoiding being like them limit your life? So is there something that you have to give up in your effort to not be like the kind of person that you don't like, or that annoys you or bothers you? So these questions, they are not really designed to be immediate. Some of you will actually have those answers right away, but many of you, it will take you longer to process the questions. So what I recommend is I take a screenshot of it if you'd like, and go back later and think about it. Okay, think about these questions. It doesn't have to be like immediate answers. You can think about them when you're shadow hiking like me, or shadow walking at dusk, or you're in a yin yoga pose, or when you're doing them after you've done a meditation. And just kind of really contemplate these, and eventually the aha moments will come through, the answers will come through, and then you're going to be able to see a piece of your shadow revealed to you. Okay, so that is one shadow work exercise or a prompted shadow work session, and I'm going to leave you with a second one. So if you guys have been to one of my workshops before, you may have heard this exercise. Always good to refresh ourselves, or for those new, this one's called Challenging Conscious Goodness. So this is a different pathway into the shadow. So we mentioned this earlier. Most of us believe we're essentially really good people, and that's right. We probably are. But for every good quality that we attribute to ourselves, the opposite also exists within us. Like, because remember, those dichotomies aren't real. And so one way that we can get into those shadow aspects of ourselves is to look at some of our good qualities, right? So what will happen is we generally repress the opposite qualities because they don't fit into our perception of ourselves. So example, if you pride yourself on cleanliness, I mentioned this one, or, oh no, I mentioned a different one. I said laziness, and I might have mentioned this one, cleanliness. So if you pride yourself on cleanliness and organization, there is a messy part of you that exists as well. But generally, that's the part that's pushed down into the shadows. That resistance, though, is what gives the quality power, okay? Because what we resist persists. And this allows that, or that shadow side, right, to continue to sabotage and influence our behavior. So what we want to do is we want to try to face it. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down 5 to 10 positive qualities about yourself. Okay, so this is the exercise if you want to take a screenshot of it. So when it's complete, so you're going to write down 5 to 10 qualities that are positive about yourself. If you have trouble with this, ask a close friend, okay? So you can get a list of 5 to 10. Now next to them, I like to fold the paper in half, and on the other side, you're going to write down the opposite. So if you wrote generous, then the opposite could be stingy or greedy, okay? So you're going to go through and you're going to have 2 polar opposites on each side, okay? And we're going to have 5 to 10 on each. So these 5 to 10 negative qualities, so those that negative side, that is in your shadow self. That is part of your shadow self. And again, here it begins to point you towards the areas where you can do your shadow self or your shadow work. So if you said greedy, okay, that is an aspect of your shadow self. And you begin to go down that pathway and you start to explore that quality. So when we face and we acknowledge, we embrace the aspects of the shadow, we begin to make peace with them as well as ourselves. Okay. Okay. So what I am going to do now is we're going to have the Q&A. So hold any of your questions. Let me go and let me see if we got any questions in the chat. By the way, you can put questions in the chat here too. So I see that Angela had said, what is a good source to learn the phases of the moon? Okay, so it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to look for like a book that's going to go in depth into like what happens at each of the phases of the moon, you can do that in many like introductory witchcraft books. So I believe that like Christopher Penczak's Outer Temple of Witchcraft, I'm pretty sure, has a whole chapter on the phases of the moon. But what I like to do is below this video, I'll have to find it. And there's a website where you can actually track the phases of the moon in your location. And I use that so that I can know when it's full moon and when it's the waning moon. I actually have it on my watch. It tells me what phase of the moon we're in. But one of the things to do, I would recommend doing, is kind of get a website like that, and I'll put it below this video. For those of you who are here live, I'm actually going to put it in I'll put it in the chat. I'll find it at the end, and you can see what phase it is. So for example, you'll be able to see that right now we're in the waxing gibbous phase, and so that will show us sort of that energy. We're about to hit our full moon is, depending on what time zone you're in, it's going to be between Sunday. I think it's on Sunday for most time zones. But that will sort of give you ideas of And then Lauren said there's lots of good apps for moon phases too. Yeah, so there are a lot of good ones out there. And just what I would recommend doing is write down 3 or 4 pieces of information every day or so that you can. Track the moon phase. So go to one of those apps or to a calendar, write down what phase of the moon it is, and then write down how you're feeling emotionally, how you're feeling physically, and how you're feeling energetically. And if you do that over a couple of cycles, you'll begin to track your own energy. Amy said there's a moon phase app on Google Play that's also very good. Okay, so that's a lot of good suggestions there. Leslie asked about books that you found really helpful in your shadow work. To be honest with you, I learned most of this when I was in grad school. So a lot of people will ask me about that. Honestly, I don't think there are a lot of great books that are user friendly for beginners. There's a lot of very technical books. There's a lot of good journals that give you a lot of prompts. They don't teach you a lot. So I will give some suggestions for those as well. There's a shadow work journal workbook it's good. It has some good prompts in it, and that might help you as well. Let's see. Amy said you exhale through your nose or mouth. Okay, so she's asking about the breath work earlier. So you want to exhale through your nose if you can. If you have a lot of congestion, you're stuffed up, you may not be able to do that. But when you're doing the breath of fire, you want to inhale and exhale through the nose. If you're doing the panting breath, though, it would be through your mouth because your mouth is open. Okay. And then Sonia said SE therapy is fantastic for feeling your body. Yeah, and a lot of times we will have a lot of that tension, right? There'll be tension in the body. Like a lot of people carry it in the womb, in the stomach, they carry it in the heart, people will carry it in the throat, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. So anything that can bring us some enlightenment, I guess not enlightenment's not really the word, but bring us some awareness of the body can be very, very helpful. Okay, so you guys can keep putting questions in the chat. What I'm going to go on now is I'm going to tell you a bit about our Shadow Seekers membership. And then I'm going to, for anybody who's still here live, there will be space where you can unmute yourself. You can ask questions. You can also continue to put them in the chat. Anybody watching in replay, put some questions underneath the video and I will go through and answer those as well. So let's talk about what's coming up next. So I'm going to tell you about our membership. I have a very, very special offer for people who are here live right now and anybody who sees us in the next 36 hours. So I would wait till the end. If you think you might want to join us, the next few minutes are going to be pretty important. Okay. Okay. So if you would like to dive in more deeply into shadow work, I invite you to join us in our Shadow Work Energy Work membership, Shadow Seekers. So this is a fairly new membership. We're about 15 months old right now. We open up a few times a year, and this is one of them. And we have probably the best deal that we've given so far in this membership, and we probably won't do this again. Okay, so I know there's a lot of hype here, but it's a big one. So stick around and listen for it. So I said our doors open a couple times a year, and right now we're accepting new members from right this moment, right as soon as this live broadcast is over until Thursday, November 30th. We're going to be accepting people because there's about a week to join. Now we have a limited number of spots every round, and we expect them to fill up pretty quickly. They usually do. So if you feel called to do shadow work in a small group setting with a guide, I encourage you to join us sooner than later if you want, once you kind of hear what the whole offer is. I will absolutely tell you that you can do shadow work on your own. It's what I did. I learned a lot of it in grad school. I did a lot of research on the internet. I did a lot of trial and error through practices to see what ones work. You can absolutely do it on your own. But it is one of those things that sometimes having the guide can be very helpful. And as the members of our Shadow Seekers membership will tell you, it can be life-altering, life-changing to have a guide and to have somebody helping you with it, right? Somebody you can go to ask the questions to and come live to events. So this is our Shadow Seekers membership. It is a shadow work and energy work membership for witches, empaths, and magically minded people. So each month we have a live workshop on Zoom plus a replay. All of our content is all done with replays. Okay, so you never have to worry about missing events. You can try to come live if you can, but all of these events will have replays that are loaded into a membership portal that all members have access to, and you can do everything in your own time. So some of our past workshops that are in the portal right now, if a person were to join now, there's a workshop on past life astrology. It's only one of many past life astrology workshops we'll do. This one focused on the South Node. We have a workshop on meeting the inner child. We have one on introduction to the root chakra, healing the ancestral wound. So if you think you're carrying something from kind of an ancestral line, this is a very good workshop for you. We also have other chakra workshops in there as well. There's a workshop on dream working for witches and many, many more. So you have a whole big portal full of these workshops that you can access. Now, each month we also have a live, usually dark moon ritual. Some of our past rituals are the Morrigan asking the difficult questions. I tell you, that ritual, I quit my job after that ritual. And now I'm working half as many hours and making more money. So some of these rituals are very life altering. We have another ritual called Amaterasu that's working with the Japanese goddess of the sun, transforming self-doubt. So if you are somebody who feels like you struggle with self-belief, really having belief in yourself, that ritual works with the solar plexus and is very good for transforming your self-doubt. A couple of recent rituals we did, one with Coventina. She's a Celtic goddess of water. That was a ritual called Speaking Your Truth, and it's all about saying the difficult things. So if you have some difficult things to say to either people who are living or even people who are gone, who you never got a chance to talk to, that can be a very good ritual for you. And then our most recent one was with Coatlicue, transforming grief. And that ritual is a very deep, very cathartic ritual where we kind of went into an aspect of our lives where we're carrying a lot of grief, and we worked to transform some of that. So that's just a little taste of some of the rituals that are already loaded into the portal that you would have access to immediately when you join us. Now, we also have a third monthly Zoom call. This is our office hours. Here you can drop in. Usually these calls, we don't have as many people show up. Sometimes it's just a couple people, and just a chance to get extra help from me and the group on whoever shows up on what you're working on. It can just feel really good to have other people going through it too, right? Who are going through kind of similar things. And then we have a whole part of the portal that contains our alignment practices. So this is where you'll find yoga videos, yin yoga, breath work, kundalini energy exercises, all those little exercises I showed you. We have full-length videos of all of those, and you can go into that portal and grab a meditation or a kundalini energy exercise, or there's movement practices, and that will help you align your energy so that you can remove some of those energetic blockages. Now, all members get access to all the lives, everything coming up in the future, plus 12 months of replays. And all that's loaded into the portal right now. So what is coming up for this month? We are working a lot with the third eye, but our very first event is our Shadow Seekers new and current members mixer on Friday, December 8th. So this is very fun. Every few months, or every 3 or 4 months when we open up, we have one of these little virtual parties where you can come in and meet the new people who are joining and meet some of our current members. We have witchy icebreakers and exercises and prizes that we give away. So that is a lot of fun. We like to have fun in this too. It's not just all of our hard work. But then we have a workshop coming up on Sunday, December 17th. This is Introduction to the Third Eye. So we're going to be working with the third eye chakra and working with our intuition. And then we have a Yule ritual coming up. This is Odin in the shadow of the wild hunt. If you've never been to a wild hunt ritual before, these are a lot of fun. They're very dark and they're very deep, but we leave with light because this is Yule, and that is the beginning of the light season. So that's coming up on Wednesday, December 20th. So all of this is included in your membership. And then we have an alignment practice coming up this month. This is a third eye meditation and some extra third eye exercises, and then our office hours at the end of the month on September the 30th. or sorry, December the 30th. So that's a snapshot of what a month in the membership looks like with the live material. Now, future things that are coming up in January, we're going to be looking at the North Node. So we usually do an astrology workshop every few months. This one is all about our destiny. So if you've ever asked the question, why am I here? What am I doing in this incarnation? This is a way through your astrological chart that you can figure out why you're here. So that's happening in January. And then in February, I'm really looking forward to this. This is the wisdom archetypes. So the wisdom archetypes are the seeker, the mentor, the student, the teacher, the healer, the wise one, wise man, wise woman, wise person. So many people who come to our membership are people who feel that they have healing capacities. They feel very deeply with other people. Or into other people's experiences. And so many of us will resonate with these archetypes of like being a seeker and being also a dispenser of knowledge too, or a teacher of knowledge to others once you've learned it. So that is going to be an awesome month. We're also going to be in that ritual that month. We're going to be working with how to access our spirit guides. So if you are having trouble talking to your guides or haven't even found your guide yet, one of them, this is going to be an incredible ritual for you, an incredible month in February. And then coming up, these are just plans for the future. We're going to be working with the mother and the father wound, whether we have serious trauma around our mother or our father. We all carry some wounding here. So this is some way to work through that. We're going to be looking at the light and the shadow aspects of the archetypes. All of our archetype work is leading towards, it's kind of like a bigger project we're working on towards our soul contract. And that is going to show us, again, why are we here? What is the path that we're on? What are we supposed to be doing in this incarnation? We're going to be doing a workshop on energy tapping. Emotional freedom technique is the technical term for it. So it's a way that you learn how to tap into parts of your body. It will release energy, emotional energy. So very incredible experience. I'll teach you how to do it on yourself, and then you can actually teach other people how to do it as well. We have a yoga nidra workshop coming up. We're going to be doing more past life regression, Kundalini for witches. That's about learning how to move your energy in your body. We'll be looking at the shadow side of the chakras and discovering your dosha. Your dosha is your elemental composition. So we'll be looking into that and what that can tell us about you. So a lot of great things coming up next year, and more healing the inner child work. So I just wanted to mention about a little tiny bit about me, okay, and I'll tell you about a little bit more of the features of the membership. But I always think it's important whenever you are considering working with someone, you should learn about them, because they can be a great person, they can know a lot, but if you don't resonate with them, they're probably not going to be able to help you very much. So I just want to share a bit about me, just so you know a little more about my story, my qualifications, where I come from, if you don't know me. So I dedicated myself to the goddess on Litha morning 1997. I practiced witchcraft with my roommates for a few years and then joined the Boston Pagan Alliance in 2000 when I was going to college in Boston. I moved to LA in 2004 to pursue my music. And when I got here to LA, I dabbled in a lot of different occult and Western mystery traditions. There's a lot of stuff here in LA. So I went around to the OTO temples. Cor Lucius Temple, there's one here that's an offshoot of the OTO. I went to the builders of the Aditum Temple. I just tried to learn as much as I could, but eventually I came back to Wicca and witchcraft in 2008, and I joined the Coven of Twilight Moon. I received my third degree in that tradition in 2011 and became a high priestess of my own coven in 2012. And then in 2015, I founded my own tradition. That is the Midnight Tradition of Witchcraft. And I became the high priestess of Coven of Midnight's Flame. So that is my current coven. I have several degrees and certifications. I have a bachelor's degree in songwriting from Berklee College of Music. So I like to bring music into our rituals. I have a master's in counseling psychology from Northeastern University. My specialization was neuropsychology when I was studying there. I have a 500-hour registered yoga teacher certification. And my specializations are meditation, yoga nidra, and yin yoga. I'm a trained doula. I'm also an educational therapist and a teacher in my Muggle job. So I am a trained teacher. And that's a bit about me. Now, a bit about my journey. I've been on the shadow work journey for many years. I dabbled in it in my 20s when I was in grad school, but I became very intense in this about 3 years ago when I had an ectopic pregnancy and I had to have blood transfusions to save my life. And so after this, obviously, there's a lot of trauma to the body that happened. I was able to, I left the hospital very anemic. I was able to bring my iron levels up within a few weeks just through eating and like a balanced life. But the emotional scars lasted a lot longer. And that's what made me dive into my shadow work. So shadow work and the alignment practices that I teach in this membership are responsible for getting me through that dark night of the soul. Without this kind of work, I don't know where I would be. I would not be here live in front of people teaching these workshops and running a membership like this. I can tell you that much. Because anybody who has been through fertility challenges or fertility journey, anybody who has been through a long-term illness knows that when a disease or any period of your life like that that's long-term, you know that the longer and further you get into it, it can become hard to keep your mind kind of focused on living, right? And to remain hopeful for the future. And this work is what has made my self-belief has intensified over and over and over again as I've done this kind of work. So I tell you, it is life altering. But that's a bit about me. So let me, here's a little graphic, and you can go, I'm gonna give you a website in just a bit. You can go check out all of this stuff and read stuff in your own time. But we have a whole membership portal. Inside of it, you'll find all of the replays of all of our events. We also have the live monthly rituals, dark and full moon rituals, sometimes full moon, mostly dark right now. Office hours and alignment practices. We have weekly shadow work prompts and exercises. I haven't really talked about our Facebook group yet, but we have a great members only Facebook group and our monthly workshops. So your membership includes all of the live dark moon rituals every month, the live monthly workshops every month, all with replays, the monthly alignment practices, the monthly office hours with replays, private members only Facebook group. This is an aspect that I love about the membership. It's a very small group because, as I said, our membership is in its early stages of growing. So here's a place where you can get extra support from me. I'm in that group every day. And our members, you'll also notice if you join us, that our members are a little family, right? So when you want to share a win or you want to share a struggle and you bring it to that small group, people are gonna be there to support you. So it's an option. You don't have to. You can totally be in the membership and not be involved in the Facebook group at all, but it is a nice perk of the membership. We also have accountability groups. It's something that we're starting after this round. So here, if you choose to, this is an optional part of the membership. If you choose to opt in, you'll be matched with a couple of other people in the membership. And it's up to you what you want to do with that. You could just have a couple friends in the group that you can text them, or you can be on a WhatsApp together. Perhaps you even do Zooms every month with each other, but just another layer of how to get some extra support. You will get complimentary tickets to all of our Coven of Midnight's Flame online Sabbath rituals, weekly shadow work prompts and exercises, access to 12 months of our past replays, and this is a brand new feature. We now have monthly membership challenges. So these are short exercises that you can do every month, and then you would go to a Google form, you fill out a few reflection questions, and that enters you into a contest. And so every month we have a prize. Sometimes it's free one-on-one sessions with me. Sometimes it's things that we'll mail you, witchy boxes of goodies, candles, cards, tarot and oracle cards, some of our favorite books. So the challenges are great because it gives you something to do for the month, active, in your shadow work. Even if you don't have time to watch any of the live videos, at least that month, if you did the challenge, you knew you could move your shadow work forward a bit. And then on top of it, you can win a prize. So great features. So here are some of the great things people have said about me, you can go, and our Shadow Seekers group, you can go to the website I'm going to give you that will give you some more, there's some more information and some more testimonials on there. But just reading these, this is that first one here. It says, Aislin is an awesome teacher, makes you feel welcome and a part of the family. And I want to highlight that one because I really do, I call ourselves our little Shadow Seekers family, because it really very much does feel that way to me. So go ahead and check those out when you want. So, you know, wouldn't you like to recover from your trauma and feel less alone? Develop a deeper sense in your intuition, or deeper trust in your intuition, enhance your magical abilities, feel more wholeness and peace, maximize the powers of your self-healing and your ability to heal others, integrate all aspects of yourself, heal emotional wounds, understand underlying emotions and motivations, improve relationships with others and not be as affected by their negativity and the negative energy around you. That's a huge one. Up-level your spiritual practice and alchemize your spirit. So wouldn't you like all that? Okay, so I'm aware, but well aware, that all this is worth a lot more than we're offering it for. I know this is worth over $100 a month. I've seen people charging similar things to that. We're not charging anywhere near that. So we're offering all of this for $37 a month. So just really think about, what are you spending a $1 a day on right now? Because it's about what this is, just a little over $1 a day, and you could get all of that, right? So you really have to think about what it's worth to you, right? To really be able to transform yourself in such a positive way. Now, this is the part that everybody's waiting for. So on top of this is probably the best offer that we're going to make to date, and I'm not sure we're ever going to do it again. We're doing this special just because it's Black Friday is coming up. And so what we are going to do this round is we're going to allow you to join absolutely free for 14 days, okay? Because we want people to get in and see what's inside the portal, see what we have to offer, and then you can decide, okay? So you can get in and you can try it and you can see if it's for you. So if you have been following us for a while, like I know that some of you have, and you've been on the fence about joining us in the past, now is the time to try it out. Come in and try it out and see what's there. If anything, 14 days, you'll get some shadow work done, and then you can go off on your merry way. But we're pretty sure that you are going to love what's there, and you're going to want to join us for the continuation of this. Now, like I said, we're unlikely to ever give quite this offer again. So I just want to kind of stress, get in now if you want this, okay? So when you join today, you'll have immediate access to everything in the portal, 12 months of workshop, ritual, office hour replays, plus all of the alignment practices. You can browse through them and watch them in whatever order you want and in whatever way you're called to, and at your own pace. Our next live event takes place on Friday, December 8th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. This is our Shadow Seekers virtual mixer. So everyone who comes in with the free trial will be able to come to this mixer, and you'll be able to actually meet us, some of us live, okay? And then those who continue, our next live event, December workshop, is our introduction to the third eye on Sunday, December 17th. Our Yule ritual coming up in the shadow of the Wild Hunt with Odin, December 20th. Oops, I went too fast there. So that's what's coming up, after that. Now, here is for the next 36 hours. Okay, so if you know that you want this is where you want to pay attention now and listen, okay? Because would you like the chance to opt in early and save money? I am going to give everybody on our wait list. I have a little wait list of people who've been writing to me over the last 3 months, and they're all going to get this offer. And anybody who's watching this workshop live right now, or anybody who watches it in the replay in the next 36 hours, you have a chance to join us early for $5 off a month. Okay, so what that means is you're still going to get the 14-day free trial. Everybody still gets that trial. But if you join in the next 36 hours, so this would be basically till the morning of Black Friday, when we actually send out our email. Our email goes out at like 8 a.m. Pacific time on Friday. Once that goes out, this coupon will not work anymore. But if you use the coupon between now and then, pre-sale 5, you put that in at checkout. When your free trial is over, your membership will be $32 a month and not $37 a month. Now, once those those 36 days are back up. Once these 36 hours are over and the coupon doesn't work, you'll still be able to get the free 14-day trial, and you'll get $37 a month. It's still a steal for everything in here, all this transformative experience that you're going to have. But if you know for sure you want in, do it now in the next 36 hours and get it for $32 a month when your trial is over. Okay. So that's pre-sale 5. And I will tell you, when you go into the sales page and you go to the checkout page, I wish that it was a little bit more clear. On the bottom of it, it says got a coupon, and you want to hit that button, and then you want to put in pre-sale 5, and then you'll see it take the $5 off. Okay. If you have trouble doing it, reach out to me and I'll help you. Aislin Lumina at bodymindwitchcraft.com. But get in. If you know you want this, get in the next 36 hours and you'll get it for 32 instead of 37. Okay. So don't wait too long, because Friday morning the coupon expires and it will be the regular price, 37. Still a great steal. Okay. So if you are ready to take your spiritual practice to the next level and heal yourself through shadow work and energy work, now is the time to join us. You get the free 14-day trial, all that's available in our membership. You can get in, do a couple of the rituals, take some of the workshops, do some of the alignment practices, right? And just see what you think, right? And you get in there, it's not a good fit for you, then you can cancel. You just simply cancel before the trial period is over, and that's it. Okay. And then on top of that, remember, next 36 hours, use the coupon code presale5 to take $5 off the monthly membership when that 14-day trial is over. So wouldn't you like to heal your emotional wounds and your trauma, develop a deeper trust in your intuition, enhance your magical abilities? I know that's what I loved as the perk of this. Feel more wholeness and peace, maximize powers of self-healing and healing of others, not be affected by others' negativity and energy, up-level your spiritual practice, and alchemize your spirit. Okay, so if that sounds like something you would like, here is the website. Anybody who is, it is live now. You can go in and purchase it now. Anybody who's here live, I'm going to put the link in the chat. Anybody who watches this in replay later, the link will be underneath it, okay? But it's also here on the screen. It's not too hard to find, bodymindwitchcraft.com/shadowseekers-offer. Okay, so let me grab it, and I am putting it in the chat here for a moment. Okay, so it's in the chat for anybody who wants it now. For those who are watching in replay, I wish you well. Have a great night. Thank you for watching this workshop. I hope that whether you join us or not, I hope that you learn a ton about shadow work and energy work and how you can use it to take your practice further. Okay. You can reach out to me if you have any questions, and we're going to stop this live now. Okay. But for those who are still here, stick around and we'll have a little live Q&A. Okay.